Branding. Every law firm worth its salt has built success off a good brand. Back in the day, branding a law firm was easy. Take the main equity partners' last names, choose a font, some colors. Voila! You got your logo, your name, and your brand. Problem is, it's ineffective, it's weak. It's what everybody else is doing. And if you don't choose a brand, then your clients will choose one for you. How can you find a brand that sizzles? One that covers ground like an Arabian racing horse. And one that's ultimately a cash cow. Today on Lawsome, we're talking about brands, the ones that stick and the ones that don't. Saddle up, partners. It's going to be an educational ride. Let's go!
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by Consultwebs.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast for law firms that claps back. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in personal and business development. On the show today, Paul and I hit the hot takes buffet with an article from attorneyatwork.com on the 3 Ps of branding for lawyers. We have part 2 of our interview with legal marketing professor Helen Bukulmez. And as always, we put our guest on the bench for 10 questions we ask everyone. I'm your host, Jake Sanders, and with me, as per usual, is the tantalizing Paul Julius.
Thanks, Jake. How's it going?
It's going good, brother. Another week, another mountain to climb.
That's right. But we're gonna take this hill. We're gonna take this hill. Branding is a big hill, my friend.
And I'm right behind you. I'm riding into your tailwind or headwind. Let's just jump right into the first article.
Pull up a plate. It's the hot takes buffet.
It's from attorneyatwork.com. The author is Julie Tolek, and it's called The 3 Ps of Legal Branding. And since branding is the theme, and we're going to have Helen on later talking about branding, I thought this was a great read. It was really concise, small, to the point. I think it really it rocked my world. What did you think about it?
I think it really hit home on a couple things, particularly what we were talking about with Helen about, when she was talking about her students telling their stories and how your story kind of becomes your brand. It's always been kind of a weird thing. Like sometimes brand is what people use to define themselves, but they don't have a definition for it. And so I think trying to put together like just what that means and how that actually represents you is important. And this, when Helen talks, and you can even hear it in her voice when she's saying like how you are is what you are. That's what Julie Tolek is talking about in this article. That basically passion is the root of it. What am I passionate about? Yeah. And just building on that, like people, that's infectious, and people will get into that. And it's something that you can keep, you can be excited about, and you can keep being invested in it. And you have to be, because that's your brand.
Well, and it kind of asks the question. So for everybody, the 3 Ps are passion plus personality equals persuasion. So this article is asking lawyers to kind of dig in. What are you passionate about? And where does your personality interact with that passion? So tell a story, be relatable, have a unique voice, be authentic, be a human is one of the things that she suggests, which I think is good for many reasons. I think it's interesting that what if I'm passionate about chess? It's completely unrelated to my practice. How can you tie in with your clients that you've worked with at Consultwebs? Have you ever had to brand someone?
Sure. Definitely. And sometimes, you take these kind of advertising archetypes and look at some of these things because, from my perspective, I'm always looking at it, using your chess analogy, three moves ahead. So I'm looking at it like, okay, well, how do I, advertise this? How do I make ads for this? How do we, write some compelling copy? But what it all comes down to is, what are you passionate about? And so, like, I can think of a great example. An attorney who had teenage daughters was very invested in not texting and driving because it was something that, kind of hit home for them. And he was very much able to kind of build that out and say, okay, I'm a family. I have a family. So this is important to me, not only from the legal consideration and from a public safety consideration, but also to my personal, family investment here. So something like that. I mean, that's kind of a slam dunk, really. It can be much harder when someone's doesn't have something like that, but they're more like, you can always look at things like community, right? Are you member of your, chamber of commerce? Did you grow up there? I mean, that's a
Right.
great thing. Like, did you grow up there? All these kinds of things. Like, you might think like, oh, I'm just whatever. I've lived here my whole life. It's boring, whatever. There's something there. I mean, there's something that means something to you that people can latch onto if you just present it the right way.
And doing the Lawsome Twitter feed, I came across, God, what was this lawyer's name? He was so cool. Morris Lilienthal, apparently from Alabama. But I came across a video of him just talking into his phone. And he said, this morning I was going to go to the gym, but then my wife told me that our kid is sick. And so I couldn't go to the gym. And then it kind of threw his whole day off. But then he said his actual job is the kid. And he was more than happy to put everything off and just take care of his kid. And this is a personal injury lawyer who's on Twitter sharing a video of just something very trivial in their life. But it made me say, like, dude, this guy's a family man. He cares about his kids. If I'm looking for an accident attorney in Alabama, who am I going to choose? The guy who showed me that he's a human with kids and just kind of just like you and me, or the person who has the billboard that looks like everybody else, and the guy who has the logo with the scales of justice,
Right.
The options are in between those things, but Morris didn't do anything crazy. He just told us about what was happening in his day, and it seemed like that connection was authentic and real, and that really kind of summed it up for me. It was personal, it was passionate, and I thought it was persuasive. So there's the 3 Ps.
I mean, look at it. You're not, you don't live in Alabama. You're not looking for a lawyer.
Nope.
You remember this guy, and he doesn't have a name like, John Smith.
No, I had to look it up.
So it worked, right?
Oh my God. But I wanted to go back, and I liked it. And he was using a text overlay thing on his video where it added captions. So, I mean, this dude's he's thinking ahead. But I thought how simple, how plain, and how non-complicated that guy's brand is, because it's just him in the morning, maybe not going to the gym. It really hit home.
I think, that's a really great thing that you just said there. Non-complicated. I think a lot of people get intimidated when they start looking at brand and they start thinking like colors and logos and design and all this other stuff. But what you just said really illustrates that, like, it doesn't have to be that complicated. What you start from shouldn't be complicated.
Yeah, well said, bro. Yeah, and so Helen's got a couple things on branding. We're going to go to part 2 of her interview, and then afterwards we're going to ask her 10 questions we ask everybody. So stick around and stay lawsome.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
We really have a relationship with Consultwebs that goes beyond simple business-to-business marketing. We have grown up with them as a company. They were there for us when we started. We were there for them when they started.
So I think that we were Consultwebs' first personal injury client 15 or 16 years ago.
I've been working with them directly for 10 years now, and they've always been a fantastic partner.
It's vitally important to us that when somebody says you should hire Bellick and Fox, and they go to the Bellick and Fox website, they're going to go beyond the website and contact us.
They understand storytelling, they understand technology, they understand a website isn't just text on a page, it's how you create an expectation for what that means to work with us.
When we get a case, they are very excited in a really genuine way that I think reflects the fact that they sort of view their success tied to ours. So that's why we've continued to use them.
I've never had anything but praise for how they've been able to market our website.
Go to consultwebs.com to learn more.
And now for a Lawsome interview.
Obviously, my students have not graduated yet. They are not licensed to practice, so we're not marketing anything in terms of legal practice. But we dig deep into who they are. Before you became a law school student, what did you do? What was your engagement with your community? And we have come up with some incredible stories. One of my students is an expert on vintage musical instruments. He can look at a guitar and tell you whether it's fake or real, worth millions of dollars. He can look at any other instrument and, identify that. And that's something that is not so common. So we took that and used it for his branding. Another student comes from a very small community where his name is known for generations because it's the same name as his father, grandfather. And we took that, used for his branding. Another student is an excellent chef, and he has come up with recipes that are very easy and usable for law school students who don't have the time. So these are very important. And this is, frankly, what sets any attorney apart from the other person. We all go to the same type of law schools. I don't care if you go to Harvard or you go to Chase College of Law. The curriculum is not going to change that much. You're going to read about the same cases. You're going to read about the same federal law. Your states may differ, but that doesn't really make a difference as to what kind of attorney you are. What sets you apart is always going to have something to do with who you are and your story. So as soon as I started my law school classes, I asked for them to look into blogging. And one of the students chose to write about cases. And at first I thought, it's kind of boring. I don't want to read cases. But what she was doing was taking famous cases, let's say O.J. Simpson, right? And using the state law and saying, if that happened in Kentucky, this is what would have happened. Or taking a very famous divorce case, out of California, which, Kim Kardashian or whatever it may be, that gets a lot of national attention. And she's writing and saying, if this happened in Ohio, this would be the outcome. Of course, she's careful not to give legal advice or to be perceived that way, so she includes disclaimers. But we're doing a lot of fun stuff. And of course, there's always a pushback because in law school, you just don't have the time. But I try to manage those. So you're exactly right. The story is what sets you apart. And if you're ignoring that story, thinking me being a lawyer is more important than anything I've done in my life, you're missing out on a great marketing and branding opportunity.
I love the fact that you bring up the concept that your story matters more than the technical application of law, because everyone can learn that. Everyone can go to school, but no one can be you. And what you bring to the practice is the most important aspect of your practice. And I think that's something that newbies and experienced lawyers could know. But you're saying that these law students don't have time to do some of these, assignments. So then an experienced lawyer who wants to get into this, is it smart for them to outsource their marketing to someone who may not understand their brand? Or how important is it to make sure that if you're working with a third party, who's handling your marketing, branding's got to be the first step there? Or what would you say?
I certainly run into those questions every day. So I'm not going to pretend that I have the exact answer. I can give I can give you an answer based on my perception and observations.
Perfect.
And my opinion, both as an attorney, as a law school professor teaching marketing, and as part of the online legal marketing industry, is that regardless of whether you have the time or not, you have to find the time to be at least part of the marketing efforts. And the reason is no one can tell your story better than you can. Now, it is very important for any attorney who realizes the importance of marketing as a general concept to find a very competent, superior marketing vendor. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means if you're working with a photographer and a videographer who knows what questions to ask you to extract that story from you, and someone who can put together that story and present to you in several different ways, now you don't have to spend as much time telling your story because you have someone who knows how to extract it from you. If you have an experienced online marketing vendor, such as Consultwebs, then you have someone who knows how to ask the right questions to create the content that reflects your story without making it the only part of your marketing. They know how to find the details that not only matter, but also are sought after by your prospective clients. So they understand your prospective clients. They also understand what questions to ask you to extract that story. That combination is very, very important. Now, I will say that if you're working with a vendor that is not specific to legal, if you're working with someone who works with any professional who will pay them money, doctors, lawyers, hospital, dentists, anybody who will give me money, I'll work with them. If you're working with a vendor like that, again, I don't want to make a generalization, but it's very unlikely that they're questioning their attention to detail and their knowledge of the SEO and how information is being perceived out there is not going to be as good as someone who's only specialized in legal. So without trying to say too much about Consultwebs, my observation, my experience for the last 3 years has been that we know what questions to ask. We know what questions work. We know what statements work. And we also would like to believe that we understand the psychology of people who come to the websites or social media pages looking for attorneys. And that's just gold.
We've been talking a lot about story and brand, this quote unquote brand. I think when people talk about that, to me, I kind of call that your identity, sort of how people are going to relate to something, whether it's a law firm or a beverage or whatever, that's what it is. So I just kind of wanted some sort of parting thoughts on how that, how do you draw from your story and turn it into your brand? How does that, not everybody is like, well, I, have a family member who was, in a serious accident and it made me see the problems with the legal system there. So I wanted to make a change. Not everybody has like a big event like that. So, are there any kind of things you look for, or like, what do you tell your students? Like, yeah, that story, that's how you're going to build onto something.
Good question.
Absolutely. That is a great question. I say the short answer is listen. Well, if you're sitting in your law office trying to serve your clients, you're very busy, who do you listen to, right? What do you listen to? One assignment I give my students during the semester, and I've received some pushback because they simply don't have the time, but they still do it, is they have to go and talk to 5 people every week. It can be anyone. It can be their brother, sister, family. It can be the people in the library that are studying at the same time and taking a break for 5 minutes, professors, people at the grocery store. They need to be asking questions. Have you ever worked with an attorney? How did it go? What do you think about lawyers? Right at this point, they cannot ask more specific questions because they're not practicing. But I want them to ask questions and listen to people to understand what type of stories, what part of their own story would relate. So when it comes to attorneys, I think we have an advantage. We have so many people coming into our offices every single day. And if we're narrow-minded, we're only talking to them about their cases, giving them some documents, having them sign things, perhaps giving them their final checks. But are we really having conversations? Are we saying, tell me more about your experience with this? What were you feeling when you first got into that accident? Did you know where to find the police report? Did you know what the police report said? Did you know why that was important? So one idea that we came up with the classroom was a lot of people don't know where to get the police report because they were in the state of shock and fear when they were in an accident, and they don't remember that the form says you can go to this online place, you can get the police report. But why do I need the police report? And what does it even mean? I see a lot of codes on there. So what if your website includes a little button that says, let me help you get the police report? What if it says, let me help you interpret what the police report says and how that's going to affect the outcome of the case? So if we take the opportunities afforded to us every single day as attorneys, on the phone, in our offices, on the street, at the grocery store, at Starbucks, getting our coffee, or talking to our marketing vendor, if we treat people like humans and ask the right questions, we're always going to have matching stories. Now, we do have a disadvantage as attorneys. We do like to talk a lot. And that leaves very little time for listening. So I have been intentionally focusing on improving that for me. And I highly recommend to all my students and to all my colleagues to listen more, to learn more about our clients. That way we can understand our own stories and we can understand how they relate to the stories of our clients who are the reason as to why we do this.
Yeah, that's there's a lot of empathy and reassurance, I think, that helps that out. Like if you can tell someone, I know this hurts, or I know you're in trouble right now and I can help you, that's a story right there.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, that was well said, Helen.
Agreed.
In 2018, it feels like we have to be so full of action and doing that a lot of people will jump into marketing or any of those things without thinking first. And I think having that pause, that mindfulness is something that I think blows over the mental states of a busy professional, because it doesn't make sense. Like, I have to schedule time to do nothing, to just listen, and how personally, you speaking as a lawyer, how do you cultivate that mindfulness, or are you cognizant of that? I mean, you were just saying that you're trying to increase listening. How do you do that in your practice, your life?
Very recently, and again, because of my employment with Consultwebs, I was very lucky to attend a leadership and business coaching training. It took about a week, and it was life-changing. It was just as if with all my confidence and lawyerness and teaching, with everything that I know and I do and I say every day, I walked into a really rough wall of knowledge of someone who was able to awaken the need in me to listen to people. And I always thought I already knew how to listen. I have so many friends. Anyone I meet is a friend. Any client whose case has finished wants to be my friend. So I had this arrogance apparently about me where I didn't even realize that I was not listening. And even when I was not hearing. So ever since that day, and before this interview,
Nice.
I make an intentional choice to say to myself inside my head, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. Because I always have something to say. I had the best life. I am very blessed. I grew up very money poor, but very experienced rich on a farm. I am Greek Bosnian. I grew up in Turkey. It's a beautiful country. I am yet to run into something prettier. I can speak 3 languages. I went to business school. I had 10 years of business experience before coming to the U.S. I learned a whole new language. I learned it in law school. I'm a lawyer. I meet interesting people every day. Suffice it to say, I always have something to say. So it's very difficult to overcome the urge to shut up and hear the story of other people. And every day I wake up and I meditate a little bit and I say, I am going to talk 30% and listen 70% today. And that's just a realistic goal. It needs to be better, but I need to check my arrogance at the door and just remember that if I listen, I have the better chances of creating that engagement and communication. And, if you read the book Endless Referrals, by Berg, B-U-R-G. That book also changed my life. It says every one person you meet equals at least 250 people within their own sphere.
Yeah.
Every time you listen to one story, it can be connected to at least 250. And I think with social media and all the tools we have in our disposal today, that number is even probably bigger. I know on LinkedIn, I have over 1,000 friends, and I can say that I know them all. So if you're treating one person right, if you're listening to them correctly, if you're hearing their stories, and if you have their best interest in mind where you want to help them to be successful before you think about yourself, you may have 251 people because of that relationship. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And if you or if anyone listening to this podcast would like to have more information about how to persuade your law school to teach marketing, or if you even want my syllabus as a sample to start teaching law school students marketing, I'm very happy to share that with you. If you have any questions about online legal marketing, Jake and Paul know so much more than I do. And hopefully we can have the opportunity to talk with anyone who's listening.
Absolutely.
So, Helen, is there an email or is there a way that people can get in touch with you directly?
Yes. My website is being built by Consultwebs right now. I'm very lucky. It's going to be legalb, as in boy.com, because no one can pronounce my last name. So legalb sounds good to me. Before then, if you'd like to reach out to me, my email address is basically my first name, Helen, at my full name, Helen Bukulmez.com, and I spell that Bukulmez, Helen at helenbukulmez.com.
Ten questions we ask everyone.
All righty. You ready?
All right.
Okay, here we go. 10 questions we ask everyone. Number 1, what was the last book you read?
Endless referrals.
Number 2, what is your best habit?
Talking with people.
Wonderful. Number 3, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, or none of the above?
Facebook.
I knew it. Number 4, coffee or tea?
That's a hard one. Coffee when I need it, tea because I want it.
Excellent. I love it. Either way, caffeine is caffeine.
Yeah.
Number 5, what is your favorite place?
I have so many, but because I grew up in Turkey, I have to say Izmir or Smyrna, Turkey.
Beautiful. Number 6, is Keanu Reeves a good actor?
Yes.
That is correct. That is the correct answer. Number 7, what was your first job?
Textile.
Excellent. Number 8, what is a skill you have outside your current occupation that you incorporate into your work?
Teaching.
Man, I walked right into that.
Yeah,
okay.
duh.
Number 9, what sites, blogs, or newsletters do you regularly check in with?
I love Forbes.com.
Okay.
And I'm
we'll
too
go.
busy for any-
I'm too busy.
And that's it. Forbes is where it's at. Number 10, and the last one, how do you unwind?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
How do you unwind? How do you relax after a long, hard day of fighting for justice?
You so walked into this one too, Paul. And
I know.
I hike.
I know. I was going to say literally walked into it, right? Okay. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Helen. Jake, back to you.
Spelling for Helen's name provided by Sesame Street. No, I'm just kidding. We'll in our show notes, we'll provide you how to spell Helen's last name because she pronounces it beautifully, and there's more consonants in it than you think. Wrapping up on the interview, Paul, what was your take? What's your hot take for this interview?
You know, it's interesting to hear, particularly from a lawyer's perspective and someone who's trying to communicate what she's learned to people and what she feels is important about it. That, you know, your brand, you know, which we've learned is really your story, your kind of identifier, is kind of what's in the front. When people think they're connecting with something, that's what your brand is representing, whether it's someone who's, you know, passionate about disability rights or texting and driving, you know, all these different things, as a family man or any of these things, that's always going to be kind of your beacon. And it should be. Like, if you have a well-defined brand, it shouldn't be difficult to line up your different marketing efforts with what that brand is, right?
Well said. Yeah. And everything you do is marketing. That concept needs to be appreciated in full scope. But I think the reason why it was beneficial having a marketing professor who's a lawyer working with new law students is that you start with the brand. And you really make sure you get your voice, because everything grows out of that. And so in some respects, everything you do is marketing. Everything you do is your brand. And lining that up, getting it tight, I think is beneficial for small firms, large firms, you know, anybody who's practicing out there and trying to get clients in the door should focus in on that.
Agreed. That's all the time we have for this week. Please be sure to follow the link for all the show notes, information about our guests, the articles we discussed. And until next time, stay lawsome.
Stay lawsome.
For show notes, links, and info, go to www.consultwebs.com/lawsomepodcast. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawsome.